Good evening. Lisa Wyke, Washington County Commissioner, and I'm representing Washington County tonight.
I'm Pahua Hoffman, Executive Director for the Citizens League, and I'm one of the ex officio members.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Jenkins. I'm the Vice President of the Minneapolis City Council representing Hennepin County.
I'm Dave Bartholomew. I'm the Mayor of Circle Pines, and I'm representing Anoka County.
Lenore Slawick, and I'm the chair, and I'm ex officio.
And I'm Janet Williams, the Mayor of Savage, and I represent Scott County.
George Torville, welcome tonight. Mayor of Inver Grove Heights, and I represent Dakota County.
Nikki Villavicencio, I'm from Maplewood, and I'm an ex officio member.
Good evening, I'm John Choi. I'm the Ramsey County Attorney, and I'm here representing Ramsey County.
So I'll give you some of the guidelines for tonight's meeting. After the meetings have concluded, we will be forwarding 3 names per district to Governor Walz for his review. These names will be made public soon after tonight's meeting. Governor Walz will take these recommendations under review and will make his selection for each district in late February or early March. By statute, the appointments must be made by March 4th, 2019. The candidates will have 5 minutes to address the nominating committee. Expectations are that within those 5 minutes, you will address the 3 questions that you received ahead of time. They are: what policy issue before the council are you most interested in addressing and why? Please describe the amount of engagement and type of engagement you will commit as a council member. And what have you done to advance equity in your district, community, or an organization you've worked with? The timekeeper will be giving you a 1-minute warning. And if there's any follow-up questions from the nominating committee, the questions and answers must be concluded within 3 minutes. This will be strictly enforced to keep our schedule and time and to start the next interview. You must submit your signed background check form to be interviewed and considered for the appointment. So our first candidate tonight is Catherine Bass. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, committee members. I'm Catherine Bass, and it's an honor to be here tonight as a candidate. Before I address the 3 questions sent in advance, I'd like to share a little more about myself than what you've read in my resume. I'm an 18-year resident of Edina and a 3-year resident of Richfield before that. By the time I graduated from Eden Prairie High School, I was the only person in my biological family of 4 who hadn't been diagnosed with cancer. That drove me to a career in public health, and I worked for 20 years to shift systems, policies, and environments to improve the health of Minnesotans across the state. In that time, I learned that the places where we live shape our lives and our health. I learned that the opportunities and conditions to be healthy are inequitably distributed, which is why babies born in the same region but in different zip codes can have dramatically different life expectancies. I learned that even the best intended policies to fix this injustice frequently fail low-wealth communities and communities of color because they are not at the heart of the decision-making process. I believe that leaders are most effective when they operate from a core set of values and a vision for what's possible. My vision, I want to share with you, is of a region that's thriving, vibrant, and healthy, where health includes access to stable, affordable homes, quality jobs, dignified transportation, safe and beautiful public spaces for everyone, and clean air, soil, and water. Where every person is treated with dignity, where we question the way things have always been done because those ways have failed some communities. Where decision-making tables reflect the community and decision makers hold tightly to a future with no one left behind. Where solutions identified by communities are regarded as practice-based evidence and as valuable as the science and data provided by experienced professional staff. Where every child lives to be 100 and sees their genius unfold because that's the society we've built. So in terms of policies, first I'd like to say that I would like to address the policy issues that are of most concern to the communities I represent. And today that issue that concerns me most is gentrification of communities and the displacement of families from their homes. As I speak with folks in the district, community leaders are raising the alarm about the mismatch of where affordable housing is located, the availability of quality jobs with good wages, and the transportation and transit supports needed to access both. Community members understand these systems are connected, and we need to look at them holistically in order to understand the impacts before decisions are made. These issues are a threat to economic stability and the health of the region, And I would seek to be a partner to local communities who are on the front lines of addressing this regional challenge. I first developed an understanding and a practice around how the built environment affects health. Transportation Commission for 6 years. I developed policy to shape that system, but more importantly, I learned that we had to follow policy with the analysis and evolution of institutional practice, process, and data in order for change to really take hold. In terms of engagement, I believe that the most effective leaders have to show up to understand the needs and the dreams of community members. I would, of course, meet with District 5 elected and appointed officials and city staff, but I would also make sure to connect with leaders and organizations that are working and organizing in community every day on issues of housing, transit, and economic development. The Bloomington Housing Coalition, New American Development Center, schools, chambers, as well as faith-based organizations that work with many immigrant communities and communities of color, just some examples. I believe that community engagement can be transformative if it's mutually beneficial, that relationships with community are deepened, and both the process and the outcomes improve as a result. I would commit to that kind of relationship-based engagement as a council member. In my most recent position, I work to support my employer in setting and meeting goals for equity, diversity, and inclusion, both in our community work as well as internally in our organization. But I want to share a specific example that provides some insight into how I like to geek out on aligning practice to vision when it comes to equity. In Edina, we adopted a master sidewalk plan while I served on the Transportation Commission. And using an equity lens, I asked questions about how sidewalk segments would be selected. What criteria were we using to make decisions about which segments got constructed and when? It turns out most of the decisions and most of the criteria were cost-based. So the neighborhood streets were up for reconstruction, and that was the most cost-effective time to build the segment. Or they were demand-based. The neighbors petitioned the city, which by design serves residents who are confident in their ability to navigate and be heard by city government. These criteria did not consider equity. Which segments most needed to be constructed because of the density of children in the neighborhood, the number of transit stops in the neighborhood, the concentration of race or ethnicity other than white, neighborhood safety data, as crashes or crimes are outcomes of disinvestment and not failings of the neighbors. This is an example of how we have to question the way we've always made decisions in order to change outcomes for equity. So with that, I would welcome your questions.
Anyone have a question? Nora?
I think your sidewalk analogy is really interesting because I was just the mayor and did a lot of door knocking, and I think that it is kind of true that how you talk about how it's segmented now and maybe how it should be. And so any examples of a policy you would take from that the Met Council works with and use that kind of framework?
That's a great question. Well, I confess I'm not as familiar with the exact policies that are in place right now. In terms of the activities that have been going on in local communities, I think everybody's been really focused on getting comp plans going and reviewed right now. And I think thinking about, I just spoke with the city manager in Edina and the head planner, and they were saying how they send the draft comp plans out for review to other communities, and that's quite a long process. And when they're waiting, they're sort of biting their fingernails about how long that process takes. And they allow for quite a long time, but that the changes could be quite substantive. And they suggested, it would be great if at the very beginning of that process we could have time with other communities to really hear from them about the concerns they have for our comp plans, so that we get that input on the front end. And so I think that's one example of which I kind of melds the equity question and the engagement question, that the earlier we can talk with folks about what their concerns are and what their dreams and hopes are, I think the better we can do on the products and the outcomes that we have at the end. So while that's not sort of segmenting out how we're asking questions or assigning points and distributing funding and budgeting, it does speak to sort of process being as important as outcomes. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to share with you what my vision was earlier, is that it's not just about what we see at the end, it's also about how we get there.
Okay, Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not clear, Ms. Bass, on where you want to focus your attention, whether it's transit or housing or economic development, parks and spaces?
I think what I want the council, or what I'd like the committee to understand, is that I'm really going to take a health equity lens through everything. I have a lot of experience working in the transportation system. It's, you know, where I sort of cut my teeth on understanding policy and policy process at the city level. And I've been working in my local community on affordable housing issues as well. So I'm really interested in affordable housing because I'm also hearing from community leaders that this is the most urgent issue that they care about and bring attention to. So those are and I don't see these systems as discrete. They all they're very complex and layer one on top of the other.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there's more time, isn't
That
there?
was the 3 minutes.
No.
Oh, that was the 3 minutes on questions.
Thank you.
Molly.
Didn't see any stop signs. Stop signs.
Good evening, Chair Slawik, Chair Williams, and members of the Selection Committee. I'm thrilled to be here this evening. I'm Molly Cummings. I'm in my 4th year as the Mayor of Hopkins. Prior to be elected to mayorship, I served 4 years on the City Council, 2 years on Zoning and Planning, and 2 years on the Park Board. I'm also co-chair of the Regional Council of Mayors. The nonpartisan RCM meets monthly to hear content experts on various topics that support the region's overall economic competitiveness, prosperity, and quality of life. Our meetings focus on many of the same areas as the Met Council, including housing, transportation, jobs, environment, and healthy communities. I'm also on the executive committee of the RCM. In 2017, the executive committee started an initiative we call Minnesota Mayors Together. The goal is to connect with mayors in greater Minnesota to build relationships and to promote civic trust by leveraging the strengths of all of our communities. On Monday, the Bush Foundation announced the awarding of a grant to Minnesota Mayors Together to look at how we can best use our voices together to continue moving forward. I also serve on the Greater MSP Competitiveness Working Group. I understand and am passionate about the importance of regional planning. I'm involved in the National League of Cities and was one of 5 mayors from around the country selected to be part of a cohort through all of 2018, focusing on equity and inclusivity. My specific project was expanding representation on boards, commissions, and in leadership roles to better reflect the face of our diverse community. I presented my work at the National League of Cities Fall Conference in LA in November. It's ongoing work, and we've had a number of successes. In the summer of 2018, we had 2 openings on our Zoning and Planning Commission and 1 on our Charter Commission. Through expanded efforts to educate and recruit a more diverse population, we usually have 3 or 4 applicants for these positions. We had 60. We appointed a person of color to our Zoning and Planning Commission, and we also referred another person to our Multicultural Advisory Commission. As a result of my work over the years with the National League of Cities, they've invited me to be a 2019 Leadership Fellow. Hopkins is a very diverse community. We've been involved with GARE, the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, since the League of Minnesota Cities offered it 3 years ago. As an offshoot of that, the city also is part of the HREI, the Hopkins Race and Equity Initiative, which is a collaboration of Gethsemane Church, the city, and the school district to engage the community in interactive discussions about race and equity. Our community conversations have had as many as 150 people in attendance. I'm also active on the MAC, which is our Multicultural Advisory Commission. My primary interest is on transportation and transit, with the Green Line extension now about to break ground. I've been very involved both as mayor and in my role on the city council in getting light rail going. Secondarily would be housing, because I think housing and equitable transit are inextricably woven together. Affordable housing and a robust, equitable transportation system provide a base of stability that allows families to put down roots, children to have access to a stable education, and adults to be able to pursue a wider range of jobs. With light rail around the corner, we need to be hyper-vigilant as developers are looking to build along transit lines. We must ensure that we protect and preserve the existing affordable housing that we currently have while doing our part to increase development of housing that is affordable to all.
Not only will LRT help our residents access jobs, but it will help many businesses attract and retain the workforce they need to be successful. Our seniors, individuals with disabilities, students will all be able to explore and take advantage of more of the wonderful amenities in the metro area without having the expense and the worry of driving, leading to richer lives. I believe it's critical to be a visible presence to those one represents. I retired from my job with an accounting firm in 2017 to devote whatever time was necessary to my expanding role as mayor in the city, the state, and in the country. Engagement is crucial. I have the time, the interest, and the passion to be fully engaged with the cities I would represent if selected, and I will resign as mayor. I would be honored to be a part of the vital role the Met Council plays in our region, and am happy to entertain questions.
Nora.
Well, so I think it's interesting. This is the first time we've had your district, right? And that Southwest Light Rail is coming.
Yes.
And it is, as now I'm becoming intimately familiar with it, it's going to be this huge deal. And so how would you overlay the frame of race equity into the transit-oriented development? I mean, how would, because whoever is selected in this district, kind of how do you, are you out there all the time, or how do you see yourself being an effective Met Council member with this going on in that district?
Well, I think that's an interesting question, a big question. I think connecting with, we already have we're a fully built out city, we're 4 square miles, and we have the cold storage site on Blake Road, which has been leveled and will become housing, and I would be an active participant in making sure that much of that housing, which is about projected to be about 450 units, is earmarked as affordable. We do not have any policies in place, but I think it is critical. Our city prefers to take everything on a case-by-case basis, and I think it is critical that we be very aware, very vocal in engaging all of the communities to make sure that the needs are being taken care of.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'd ask a question. So how would you suggest people communicate, or Met Council communicates with those areas that maybe are a little more on the fringe of the metropolitan area that may not be so enamored with metropolitan planning and governance? How do you talk to those folks?
I'm really passionate about building relationships, and I think oftentimes it's a matter of sitting down face to face, having conversations, talking about the need, talking about the advantages, acknowledging that there are going to be different forms of opinion, but why it is essential, what it will do for my community, the other communities in the district, and answering the questions and concerns about those. I think it's relationship built, and I think it's easier to address those concerns when you can be face to face and have a conversation with someone.
Anyone else? Andrea?
Can you just speak to a little bit about community engagement?
Sure. Community engagement is critical, and Hopkins is 40% non-white, and so our community engagement has not measured up to what it should be. That has been something that I've been very focused on. I think that it is, the most important thing is being involved, being a part of, sitting down face to face, making sure that everyone is at the table, that everyone's voice is being heard, that we are doing with, not to or for any population, and that we take the concerns of everyone in mind as we make our decisions.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next applicant is Joe Ellickson. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Joe Ellickson. I live in Edina with my wife Jackie and my 5-month-old son Jake. I'm a veteran, I'm a millennial, and I'm a national award-winning communicator. I'm also a believer in One Minnesota and the mission of the Metropolitan Council, because a future that's centered on equity, livability, and sustainability will help move us all forward. Move forward on transit, on affordable housing, and water quality. And working together for all of our communities will lead to stewardship and prosperity for our region. Building community equity and accessibility will not be done through spectating. It requires energy, engagement, and endurance. And I believe that if you have the opportunity to make the world around you a better place for everyone, you do it. This is why I want the honor of serving on the Metropolitan Council. I'm committed to service. At 18, I signed up for the United States, or to serve in the United States Marine Corps. I dutifully served during Operation Iraqi Freedom with people from around our country and the world. I gained a wider perspective on who we are as a country and the different cultures that make up who we are. I learned that bringing people together with different perspectives, leaders, stakeholders, and impacted communities, you get better results for everyone. I've applied this throughout my life, including my service for the chairman of the Transportation Committee of the United States Congress, where I worked with communities and leaders across our state on transportation opportunities. And I brought this perspective with me to St. Paul in the Public Works Department, where I served alongside engineers, planners, and policymakers to communicate street construction, sewer services, garbage and recycling transitions, and the building of bikeways. These aren't always the sexiest of topics, but they're critical services for our communities. I led communications and engagement on both a small neighborhood bikeway, Cleveland Avenue, that connected students between campuses and a commercial corridor, as well as the installation of one of the most modern bike facilities in the United States, the Capital City Bikeway. On both projects, we listened to neighbors, businesses, and of course bikers, and to make sure we were creating proper connections with the communities. And as many of us know, engagement on bike lanes can be just as contentious as a light rail. So, the experiences I lived in the Marine Corps, my up-close knowledge of local government, and learning from a chairman in Congress the importance of a big, bold vision, make me confident that I will be a thoughtful and effective member of the Transportation Committee. I'll also bring my personal passion for affordable housing, because I know how it impacts people that need the most help, including veterans. More veterans from my generation need help, and I'm committed to creating policies that open doors and homes in all of our communities for them and everyone that needs help. I'm not looking for a title. I'm looking to be effective, to show up and engage, and create a shared vision for our region. I'm going to meet with policymakers and attend community meetings. I'm going to use digital platforms to communicate with diverse audiences. And I'm going to show up to community events and actively engage my neighbors. Engaging people is something I'm really good at. In fact, I was named National Communicator of the Year based on our work on accessibility, equity, and multilingual services. We didn't wait for the community to come to us. We actively engaged with them in their languages and where they were at. I've been committed to equity throughout my life. I've served on racial equity and diversity hiring teams. I've helped lead a statewide effort to protect people's ability to vote. I fought for TSA workers to have a voice in their workplace. And we actually created a multilingual snow emergency app to walk people through a very confusing process. I'm dedicated to equity. I'll make sure we're connecting underserved communities to opportunity. I'll seek out perspectives when it comes to studying transit systems and lines that connect us. My heart's compass points to all directions of our region. I'm a regionalist. You see, my life, including where I met and married my wife, was in Minneapolis. I love my old Bryant neighborhood. I've spent much of my career in St. Paul. I know our capital cities and the opportunities and challenges it faces. I now lead communications for the city of Eagan. I'm invested in the East Metro. And my wife and I, we are raising our family in the West Metro. I believe in regional balance, and I know the value of shared success. I'm committed to service, equity, and moving our entire region forward. I want to be a part of building one Minnesota. I'm Joe Ellickson, a millennial, a proud veteran, and a professional communicator, and I ask for your support to serve on the Metropolitan Council. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Nora, or anyone?
Does anybody else have any questions?
Okay, it's your turn, George.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you.
You know, and through your career and reading the resume that we've got is that you've usually been behind the scenes.
Yes.
So you've been able to answer the complaints and the questions and figuring it out. Now there's not somebody in between. They're going to call you.
I'm stepping up.
Little piece on what you think. And have you had any interaction with the Metro Council in reference to the other positions?
Sorry, can you clarify the exact question there?
The first one is that taking a look at it, you've been behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And taking a look at it, so you get it maybe third party, fourth party, or whatever, and that you have to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little different, but maybe more important. Through all of those, have you had any interface with the Metro Council?
Actually, I'm looking at a few of my friends in the room. So, to be honest, I've interacted quite a bit with people who've helped build this vision over the past couple of years. One of the people who I would consider a friend and somebody, a political confidant, and somebody who I like talking policy with is the former chair of the Metropolitan Council. I would say, just even being in downtown St. Paul, a number of other friends. Talking about it and actually interacting on some of our transportation and communication aspects, whether it's working collaboratively on different projects or with different communities. I've interacted there, but to be honest, I'm really excited about. I've been doing engagement and answering questions from multiple communities throughout my career, and I'm excited to actually stand up myself to represent the community. So.
Andrea.
This is really brief. Thanks for shouting out the Bryan neighborhood.
Yeah, that's my home.
I think you're the first candidate to do that so far. So to the rest of you candidates, if you have some Bryan neighborhood cred, that would be helpful.
Okay. Another question? We got a minute left. Okay. Who?
Mr. Exon, thank you again for your service and for applying for this role. You mentioned that you are passionate about your work in equity. Can you let us know what you have learned about yourself through that work?
What I've learned is patience. I have learned that I need to, a lot of times what I want to do is I want to get an immediate result. You don't get immediate results. It takes showing up. It takes building trust. It takes being thoughtful. It takes listening. It takes adapting. It takes so much. There's no easy, quick answer. So when it comes to building equity in all neighborhoods, when making sure, trying to invite people to a table that they've never wanted to attend or didn't think that they were invited to, making sure you go through the steps to make sure that they feel welcome. One of my favorite things was working for Senator Franken. It was my job to, can I finish this? Sorry. It was one of my jobs to recruit the staff for a statewide, our statewide Communities of Color program. We didn't have initially any applications, so I went out of the community. I remember going to knock and talking with Anthony Newby, and he said, "Why should I send you resumes? You're another person who's coming up here and trying to recruit somebody to help elect somebody in a really quick time frame." And I said, "That's completely fair, Anthony. You've known me for a few years, but here I'm coming to you in a different role." So I sat down with him the next week, and I sat down with him the next week, and we continued to have conversations. And we were thoughtful, and we built that relationships, and he helped us build one of the most, or he helped connect us with people who helped us build one of the most dynamic statewide Communities of Color program in campaign history in the state of Minnesota. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Our fourth candidate is Ron Earhart.
Do you guys read all this stuff that we send you? Because I don't want to talk about it.
We had over 200 applications, and we went through them, several hundred pages, and yes.
All right.
Sir. If you told us where you were born and where you went to school and that, we read it.
Yep.
I didn't tell you that, but I was born on the north side and went to Minneapolis North. I graduated from there, and that's where I started my diversity training. Okay. I'm going to start with the third question first, just because I have some notes on it here. When I started over there, the first thing that I had some things to think about was adding unfair discrimination practices to the Minnesota Human Rights Act, and that was to include discrimination on sexual orientation. I co-authored that, and I voted for it. In 2012, there was two constitutional amendments. One of them was one man and one woman shall be a valid marriage. That was a no vote for me, and I put a lot of effort into supplementing my regular campaign stuff with a no vote on that. And my district was according to Dayton, he said, your district led the state in the no votes on that. I also voted no on the photo ID. And then we come to 13, because of that, the passage of no on the marriage amendment. We passed, which I co-authored, Same-Sex Marriage Act was passed. 13, I also carried the Equal Rights Amendment. You have all heard of that. They brought it back. At that time, it didn't fly, but we tried. And it's a copy of the federal, and there are a number of states that have indicated that they will have already passed it, and it's getting hot again. I also co-authored the Minnesota DREAM Act, which was undocumented Minnesotan high school students that graduate are eligible for in-state tuition, state financial aid, and also they can get private funding. 2013, there was a big scramble about driver's license and immigrants, and I thought we should give these people a driver's license, because otherwise we got them driving around without any driver's training. And I was chair of the committee, so I could get it out of there. And also the other problem with it is they can't get insurance without the driver's license. So it passed out of my committee, but it never got to fruition on the floor. Let's see, 2010. Oh, I've also been on Edina's Human Rights and Relations Committee. Now, as to my other works on the, I did a lot of work with transportation. I spent 22 years in the Minnesota House, 18 years as a moderate Republican, and 4 years as senator at DFL. Because the center is where most decisions are made. You got to get the consensus from both sides on something, even if neither side likes it very well. And of course, that's what's going on right now in Washington. Where do you find something that you get something, but you don't get it all? And I utilized that principle through all of the major things I did, which was change the property tax system, and also came forth with two bills, one in 2005 and one in 2007, that had all of the things that were necessary: gas tax increase, sales tax, and tab fees. And those are all maneuvered between the parties that said we don't want any transit, and the other side who doesn't want to transit but no particular monies for roads and bridges, which they actually needed. So we got city versus rural on that, and it was a lot of back and forth till we arrived at something that everybody could vote for. And I knew how badly that transit needed to be supported, so I hung in there, and we moved. There was a transit, even though Pawlenty vetoed both those bills, and one of them was a constitutional amendment to move MVES to transit.
5 minutes.
Ron, to be fair, maybe you want to say which group you'd like to serve on if you did get to Metro Council.
Well, I think that transportation would certainly be. I have I probably have much background on that as anyone in the legislature.
I'm going to go quick so you get the 3 questions kind of answered. Engagement. How are you going to engage the group?
Well, I was in financial planning. I've got the equivalent of a master's degree in finance, and I'm only servicing those folks now. I'm not looking for a new business because they're much more trouble.
How have you done on equity? What do you think we should do around equity?
I thought I told you that.
Well, kind of. Yeah, it's just...
Okay, well, I could say that my high school was about a third Jewish, about a third Protestant, and about a third Catholic. And so when I was dating, I always make sure I was equitable to everybody.
That's about as good as you can.
I don't know.
Anybody else have a question?
I mean, I grew up in a community that was
Diverse.
yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
One question that I have is, you have so much knowledge about transportation. I mean, in fact, I have watched a part of your career, and you're a very extraordinary legislator. But I'm wondering, do you think that you could ever learn something from people who know nothing about transit or transportation that might be impacted? And what kind of information do you think that they might help inform you about all of the knowledge that you currently have?
We have a railroad in Edina that's called the Dan Pass Line, and nobody wanted to put rail on that. And I knew that because I went up and down. I walked my district about 14 times, so I listen to people, what they have to say, and then we transmit that into action. And so I blocked the use of that as a rail line for between Northfield and let's see, St. Louis Park on the other end, at the request of the mayors along the line as well as the people. Now that can be opened up again, but nevertheless. Does that answer what you mean? Okay. You got to listen.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Leticia? Sorry I didn't try the last name.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. Buenas tardes. I'm Leticia Guadarrama, and I'm honored to have this opportunity to be here today. Thank you for your confidence in me as a possibly finalist for District 5 and your commitment to this process. I'm privileged to come to the United States from Mexico as a new immigrant. Standing here before you is a testament of the opportunities afforded to me, opportunities I want to make accessible to everyone as a servant leader of the Met Council. I'm here today because many do not know what the role of the Met Council plays in their lives, in access of housing, transportation, and economic and recreational opportunities. They need a voice and advocate at the table to bring their life stories and barriers they face to the conversation. Governor Walz ran a platform of One Minnesota that is fair, accessible to all Minnesotans. I believe that the Met Council has a significant role in achieving this vision, but only together through relationships and partnerships with our diverse communities we can achieve One Minnesota. It's through a social justice lens that I make decisions and prioritize work. We must not allow systematic oppression by safeguarding the status quo. How do we do our work is as important as what we do. Our challenge as policymakers, regional planners, and service providers is to pull from the tremendous strength, knowledge, skills, and diverse perspectives of our communities to inform of our decisions. The policy issue that I'm more interested in addressing is how the Met Council policy interacts and improves quality of life. Our community access to affordable housing and effective transportation intersects with their economic and recreational opportunities. Lack of transportation is tremendous barriers for our young adults, different able, elderly, and people living in poverty. Innovation and new technologies have opened up ways to do this work differently. For example, in Eden Prairie, there is a pilot program to use on-demand drivers like Lyft and Uber, supplement public transportation options, especially for those more than 1 mile from the transit hub. Through Met Council programs like Livable Community Grants, we can explore innovative approaches. As an educator and lifelong learning, I know that learning and education is key to liberation and personal empowerment. My work is centered around my mission to serve and place people and community at the heart of my job. The mission will carry over the commitment to the Met Council and how I will engage the community in this work. I will engage as I always do, prepare, inform, and ready to contribute. I'm also committed to building consensus on the Met Council. I believe that justice begins with the obligation to treat the people around us with respect, kindness, caring, and generosity. As an urban educational leader for over 30 years, my actions are guided by the belief in advocating equity. Results are not about who gets the credit. Results are about from building community trust through shared leadership and decision-making. As a teacher and a community engagement expert in Minneapolis Public Schools, I have interacted with families and students from various backgrounds, cultures, and experiences. I have helped them navigate our sometimes complicated system of public education and resolve issues in and out of school. I have also been a strong advocate of raising awareness of celebrating our rich diversity through Latino, Hmong, Oromo, and Somali culture events. We struggle in Minneapolis with bias and stereotypes. Cultural competency and humility require us to understand how our communities are unique, but we are more than the same, that we are different. As vice chair of the Minnesota Council of Latino Affairs, I connected deeply with the Latino community to inform our policy and advocacy work at the Capitol. It is important to understand how decisions impact real people in their daily lives. As a member of the Minnesota Advisory Committee to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, we work on identify and analyze racial disparities in police actions. I'm skilled in understanding systematic inequities and identifying solutions. I have done this work by building relationships, being present and transparent, acting to resolve issues, and active positive change. I view this position as an opportunity to round my impact to the whole metro region and contribute to the success of the diverse state. I'm experienced, intelligent, motivated, and hardworking. I know how to get results. Thank you for your kind consideration.
Okay. Questions? Nora.
You know, thank you for being here, and I found your comments interesting. You know, again, I'm going to ask about light rail and coming through your district. How do you? I'm sorry. Southwest Light Rail.
Yeah, actually, Southwest Rail is going to pass behind my house.
Yes,
yes, it is. And talking about no including the community in decisions, it was a surprise to a lot of us, our neighbors. We didn't really know about it, even though I'm really connected with people in our government.
So how would you, so in Maplewood, we have something like that where it's between houses and people's backyards, and so.
I think it would be actually an opportunity for businesses, and I think we will have an opportunity for really affordable housing. That will be like an incentive to really build around that. There's plenty of space, I think, in the area, especially that crosses Hopkins, Edina. There's plenty of space to really build and really improve the life of our residents too.
So you would work to engage residents?
Oh yes, I think one of my gifts is really engagement, and I really I do believe in actually having the agenda, know what I want them to hear. I want the people to really make the agenda on what we are going to do. I think I'm skilled in that, and I really make connections very easy. And I really make the commitment, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to really commit to really be strong in engagement. I do.
Ruby, yes.
Leticia, I know of your work with community.
Thank you.
Especially with students and
Thank
parents. You talked about building consensus. Can you say a little, and you probably answered my question a little bit, but if you want to say anything further around consensus and really engaging.
Well, consensus, especially this is a perfect example. It's somebody like you. You come from different backgrounds, and to come up with a solution is difficult. But I think when we work together and really try to listen and reflect on what people are saying, we can come up. We might don't all agree at the beginning, but I think we come back with a decision to benefit all the group.
Anyone else? Okay, John.
I'm
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, Letitia, just quickly, your major policy issue that you'd like to work on if you did get on Metro Council?
Transportation and affordable housing and innovating ways to really accomplish that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your work with kids.
Thank you for doing this.
Okay, that concludes the interviews for the District 5 applicants.
Yeah.
Taking a break? Or you want a break?